Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. And today I'm going to make my version of that iconic Mickey Parks wreath, the one where Mickey looks sort of like a jack-o'-lantern that they put up in the Magic Kingdom in the fall. The Disney store sells the wreath, but it was sold out, and a friend of mine asked me to make the wreath for her. But she did want some changes, so this wreath is going to be similar to the Mickey Parks wreath, but with a slightly different color palette. And I'm going to start with making the Mickey. So I did just take the Mickey from the Mickey Parks wreath, and I made a sort of an outline of it and printed it out the size that I want. I'm going to make an 18-inch wreath, and the ears pretty much stretch almost 18 inches on the Mickey. I'm going to make Mickey out of foam insulation. So I purchased from Home Depot a 4-foot by 8-foot, 1-inch thick piece of foam insulation. This was a little bit under $30, and this was the most economical choice for me because I plan to use the foam for other projects. But they do sell smaller pieces of the foam, so if this is all you're going to make and you want to follow this method, you can buy a much smaller piece of this foam for less money. So what I did first was just cut out 2 rectangular pieces of the foam large enough to accommodate my Mickey. Now I glued the pieces of foam together. I used clear Gorilla Glue. You always want to spray a little bit of water when you use this, so I put the glue on one piece of foam and I sprayed with water on the other, placed them together, and then put some heavy books on top and let it dry overnight. However, I don't have anything deep enough to cut through 2 inches of this foam, so this project would have been easier for me if I had cut out 2 Mickey heads and then glued the foam together. So if you don't have something deep enough to cut 2 inches of foam, I recommend that you do it that way. Now, once I did have my piece of foam, I traced Mickey on it with a Sharpie and I drew over the features with a pencil. So I just pressed down hard enough so that they would make an indentation in the foam. And then I removed my printout and traced over the features with the Sharpie. So to cut out around the Mickey head, I used a combination of my box cutter knife and my little saw that came with my little miter box and saw. And I'm doing a rough cut, but I do want to get it as close to the edge of the outline as I can because I am going to be sanding it to make it smooth. Now, for some reason, my camera is way zoomed in, and I apologize for that. What I'm doing is cutting back some of the ears. Now, I'm not cutting them down to 1 inch, because then I wouldn't have even needed to cut out the ears at all on that top piece. But I am cutting about 3/4 of an inch away, so that the ears are set back from Mickey's head. And you could do this with the stem as well. I ended up sanding the stem back. So then, outside, with a respirator, because this stuff probably isn't good for you to inhale, I sanded the Mickey with the mouse sander. So I just want to get the edges of it smooth and maybe sand down the inside of the ear a little bit to make it sort of slope down towards the middle of the ear, and sand that stem a little bit. I'm also going to try to get a little bit more of a pumpkin shape, so I'm going to curve in a little bit, and I think I could have been more aggressive here. So my Mickey is relatively flat. Now with the features, I'm going to use my Dremel to cut out the features. So I'm just going to go along the lines at first, and what I'm going to do is, for the pumpkin lines, I'm not going to cut those very deep. But for the mouth and the eyes around the pupils, I will be cutting those out fairly deep, but I cut them definitely deeper than I needed to. And once I had that all cut out, I just had to try to get all of those crumbs out of the crevices, and I used some sandpaper to try to smooth out the insides of the eyes and the inside of the mouth and any other place where it wasn't very smooth. For example, in the ears, there were some spots that I gouged out a little too much with the mouse sander, so I just went over that by hand. Now for the inside of the mouth and the inside of the eyes, in the Mickey Parks wreath, it looks like a jack-o'-lantern that's lit up from the inside. So what I did was I mixed up some of this yellow paint. This is pale daffodil is the color, with some glue. And the reason I decided to do this is because it's not very even on the inside of the mouth or the eyes. I wasn't able to cut that out very evenly. So I thought I need something that will flow into there and fill it in. However, do not do what I do here, because I basically fill it with this mixture and it took way too long to dry. And so what I ended up doing was digging some of it out. And then later what I did was I used some puff paint to fill in. Now the puff paint doesn't flow in as well as this does, but what I would recommend is layers of puff paint until it's almost to the level that you want, and then layers of white glue mixed with paint, very, very thin layers, and when they dry, you can add layers until you get the nice smooth background that you want. And if you don't cut it out too deep, like I did, you won't need that many layers. But definitely don't just pour an entire container of glue and paint in there, because it will not dry. So while that was not drying, I decided to put some spackle in to any little divots that I wasn't able to smooth out with the sandpaper. So that's mostly on the ears, but there are a few spots on the face and on the sides of Mickey where I also put a little bit of spackle. And once that had dried, I just smoothed it out with a damp towel. And then I did something else that I recommend you not do. I knew that this was going to take several layers of paint, so I thought I would experiment with the paint. I started by creating a darker version of this harvest orange, and I put it in the cracks. And it dried so dark, I just absolutely hated the way it looked, and it took me several coats to replace that with just the plain, straight-up harvest orange. I also experimented with a mix of yellow and orange for Mickey's face, and I also rejected this. So I just painted over all of that, over the lines and over the face with the harvest orange. And if you do that to start, you might not have to do as many coats as I did, because I needed to cover all of this up. You're also going to want to paint the back of this, because you will be able to see the back. Originally, I thought I was going to put something over the back of the wreath, and so you wouldn't see the back of Mickey, but you will. So you do want to paint the back of this as well. And then after I had him fairly well covered with the harvest orange, I mixed a little bit of the harvest orange with the glue. Now hear me out. This is because none of my cuts are really perfect, and I thought this will smooth out the surface, and it will give it that nice shiny look. Now we're going to cover it with Mod Podge anyway, but I thought that this might just smooth out some of the imperfections, and I just did a light coat of this over all of the orange spots. Now for the stem, I did paint that orange just to get some paint on it, but we're going to paint that brown, of course. And I'm going to start with the darkest brown, which is Folk Art Home Decor Chalk Paint in Java. And then I'm also going to use a couple of other browns that I have here, some burnt umber and some Mississippi mud, which is a very light brown. So I'm just going to do the dark brown first, and then drag through that with the lighter colors, just to make it look a little bit more natural and stem-like. Now at this point, I'm putting the puff paint in. I've scooped out some of that glue and paint mixture that wouldn't dry, but I thought the nose would look better with some yellow paint in it. And the advantage of the puff paint is it has a tiny little tip and I can squeeze it in. So I also put that into the nose. And with everything all dry, Mickey gets a coat of matte Mod Podge. Now I have an 18-inch wire wreath. I do think that a grapevine wreath would be a nice choice, but I don't have one. I cut a piece of cardboard, I traced around the wreath onto a piece of cardboard. So I have a piece of cardboard which is the size of the wreath, but I am not going to put that over the back. So trace around the inside now before you start attaching things to the wreath. And we're going to cut a ring out of that, or I am. And I have all of these florals. These are all from the Dollar Tree. So one thing I find with faux foliage is that the leaves can get very bent. So before I use any of these, I am going to iron them all on the lowest setting on my iron. It's a nylon setting. And I'm just going to iron all of the leaves. And this is the color palette that my friend chose for this wreath, but it's one that I love. So it's these sort of blue, almost teal leaves, maple leaves from the Dollar Tree, and also the peach colored leaves, along with other flowers from the Dollar Tree. And also they have this pampas grass. But the only thing I'm going to iron is the leaves. So then it's just a matter of wiring this to the wreath. And at first I wasn't thinking clearly. This wreath has a clear top and a bottom because Mickey's going to be in the middle of it. So you want to, I think, make the sides of the wreath symmetrical. So at first I didn't do that. But you'll see I attach pampas grass and then peach leaves, blue leaves, and then some orange flowers. So what I'm going to do is leave one set of those and take out all the rest that I put in and mimic that on the other side so that I have some symmetry. And ultimately, I think I ended up taking out the pampas grass too, and I only left pampas grass on the bottom of the wreath. And then I only had one set of blue leaves left and one set of peach leaves left. So I cut those apart, and I use my aviation snips to cut those. They're very strong, and they'll cut the wire at any location in any of these florals. So I just split those up, divided them between the right and the left. And you can see I have the pampas grass at the bottom there. But what I decided to do then, and you can't see this, so you probably don't need to do this step unless you like the way it looks with this just at the bottom, is I have one of those hats from the Dollar Tree that I've completely pulled apart. So I have just the braid from the hat. And what I'm going to do is hot glue that around the bottom. So I'm just going to wrap it around the bottom and just use a little bit of hot glue every few wraps to hold it in place. And then with that wrapped there, I have these other flowers, but I only have one set left. So I cut those off of the stem and I inserted them into that wrapped, I'm going to call it faux hat straw. And then I attached some sort of off-white flowers to the center top. Now to attach Mickey, I just poked a piece of florist wire through each of his ears. So into the side of the ear and then up through the back. And then I just wired that to the wire frame. You can see I didn't paint the back of my Mickey, but I will paint it. Alright, so now I'm going to put something on the back just to partially to disguise the back of the wreath, all of those wires, but also because you can see that wire wreath form through all of these florals. And I think it would be better if we had something behind it that has a natural look. So I have a ring of cardboard, and I am cutting out a piece at the top so that we can hang our wreath using that wire wreath form. And I have some more of that, I don't know, millinery straw or whatever, from a hat from the Dollar Tree. This is a slightly darker hat. And I'm just going to wrap it all the way around this, but first I poked some holes in it with a needle and put some wires through so that I will be able to wire this to the back of the wreath form. So I'm going to wrap over those but leave them exposed. And I'm not going to have enough of this to do the entire circle of cardboard and I don't want to take another hat apart. So what I'm going to do is down at the bottom where I had already wrapped the wreath with the light color, I'm going to wrap around this cardboard with the light color as well. So that should match just fine. And then with that wired to the wreath, here I am trying to paint Mickey without getting paint on any of my florals. So I ended up sort of taping them away from Mickey and painting the back of Mickey. And now here I hung it on my craft room door and I made some changes. I had bought some blue felt pumpkins that I put in it and I just didn't like them. So I swapped those out for some peach and green and an off-white pumpkin. I might swap those out again. I think orange pumpkins might look better, but I don't have any right now. And I decided I didn't like that millinery straw at the bottom of the wreath, and I had a couple of orange faux mums, so I stuck those in at the bottom. I would love to know what you think of this project. If you like these colors or you like the original part colors, or maybe you have a different suggestion. I wonder if I should have gone more neutral with the back, maybe just the blues and the peaches and not any pops of orange, and let Mickey be the pop of orange. Tell me what you think in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.